All right, guys, welcome to the Back Nine. I have local product and local legend Bobby Trosset with us. He is a sports announcer down in Baltimore, Maryland. I mean, he has done it all so far. His resume is unbelievable, being a year older than me. I mean, man, I got to pick it up. What's up, Bobby? Today's episode is going to look a little different. We have an interview with Bobby Trosset. That's going to take up the full episode. We're really looking forward to that. Today's episode is sponsored by Central Insurance Agency, located in Malta, Guilderland, and Colony. These guys helped me out when I needed my car insurance last minute. They faxed it over to me in 20 seconds so I can get my new car set up. So if you need help, hit them up at 518-516-2001 or online at 2001cia.com.
BRhat, how you doing, man? Always good to see your face. I know you got D-Ball behind a camera. This is turning back the clock. It's always good to spend some virtual time with you guys, even though we are neighbors back home. I'm always going to remember that. You're still living around the block, aren't you?
That's it, man. Haven't moved. This is my parents' basement right here. Looking to, hopefully this podcast can pay the bills and I can get out soon.
Thanks for having me on.
Of course, man. Thanks for joining us. First, let's start off. We went to the same elementary school, right? We went to Ellesmere Elementary, grew up together, and we announced basketball together. Being able to watch the Giaconis, I had some good calls for them, man. But before we get started,
wait, quick aside here. I got to tell this story. I think you may already be familiar with it. I think it was my senior year. I was on the mic. To your point, it was men's. So Bethlehem versus Guilderland, and I think you may know where I'm going with this. I got a little excited on the mic. You know, John Sika's in his prime at that point. He went up and swatted somebody on a Guilderland team. He met him at the rim, one of the best blocks that I can remember inside. They didn't call it the warehouse at that point. And I got on the mic, and I said, Sika goes SWAT City, baby, something like that, something completely far from neutral. A.G. Irons looked at me like he was ready to slit my throat. And then post-game, I don't know if you remember this, I got approached, and a Guilderland father put his hands on me. I'll never forget it. Hopefully there's nothing that comes close to that in my career moving forward. I probably got a little bit too excited, but that's just what it popped up in my mind when you said that.
How could I forget about that moment? Unbelievable. I will never forget that moment. I definitely grew on irons a little bit.
You have that way about you, though. We know that, being that, you know, if you're from the 518, you do understand that. You know what you're famous for in the Trosset household. I don't mean to take over the interview right now, but I think you're going to enjoy this one. Anybody who's a fan of BRhat, which I imagine is the majority of your listenership, is going to love this one. What are you famous for when it comes to intermediate tri-village baseball at McGee Park that Frank Trosset tells time and time again? He just told it when I was home earlier in the summer. I don't know how it came up, but you got to take it away from here.
Man, I don't know how I didn't even think about that. So Bobby's dad was my coach, Frank. Class A guy. Mr. Trosset was my baseball coach. We were the Bad News Bears. We had a team thrown together like no other. Bobby wasn't even on my team. It was his sister. It was Tori. Which,
the best part.
Oh, Tori, Gabby. We had the only girls in the league on our team, and we took it to every single team. We made it to the championship, bottom of the sixth. Hold on. Manager on the other team took out Austin Herman. Herman, shout out you. He was a gross pitcher back in intermediate. He's going to love that I mentioned him, too. He's going to eat that up. But Austin Herman got taken out in the second inning by, I'm not going to name the manager. He got in a little argument with Christian Freese, who was the umpire at the time. Said, hey, you can't throw Austin Herman back in the game after you took him out in the second inning. You can't put him in the sixth. Big fired up, right? Sixth inning. It's 6-6. Tommy Ganley, bases loaded. Ball over my head. I'm running. Right field, trip over my own feet. Some will call it a dive, and I caught it. Saved probably 3-4 runs. Kept the game at 7-6 in the extra innings. Now I couldn't hit for crap, right? So here I am, 2 outs. Full count, 2 outs. Ball 4, I walk. Riker hits a liner. Me and him on second and third. Alec Furrier, Gapper. We come around to score. We win the championship, 8-7. I'll never forget it.
It was almost like that was instilled in your mind. I really didn't know how familiar you would be with it. It's been years and years, but it's as if you were ready for that. That's awesome. I know that was a big moment in your baseball career. So
being 5'4", you don't have many big sports moments. I'm Rudy out here, man. So that's when I have them, I remember them for sure. This mustache started up. This was been a big thing on social media. It just kept going. People sent you masks. So I thought I had to join you real quick before we keep this.
There it is. Now we're on an even playing field.
I feel like a grown man now.
Do you know how many people have reached out to me in our listenership base down here and said, why don't you just diet? Can you imagine me? I'm a fair-skinned, blonde hair pretty much guy with the color that you're rocking. It just would look wrong. It already looks very wrong in the opinions of many down here, but I'm going to keep letting this thing rock. Why not right now? We're in the middle of a quarantine.
Dude, it looks great. And let me tell you, I grew mine out back in March or April when I wasn't seeing anybody, and it was atrocious.
It's something that, sure, did it cross my mind whether or not I wanted to let this thing go for a little bit more than a couple weeks? It's been several months now. I've gone on several first dates with this thing, and I'm looking myself in the mirror before I walk out the door, and I'm like, no, yeah, 100%, we're doing it. I trim it up. It's not like it's going over my lip or anything like that. So, it's fun. And to your point too, BRhat, it's been funny to see how receptive some have been. We have one of our loyal listeners literally like sewed together a mask with my mustache on it. And then she put together one of Lamar's face and then another one of me in the broadcast booth. So like I never expected that. I thought it was a cool moment that was a little creepy, but at the same time, memorable.
Absolutely. I mean, getting gifts from different, we'll get into that. I got a couple questions. I got a rapid fire question game. New segment coming up with Bobby. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But before, let's get into the Orioles game you attended last week. Explain to me what it was like being at the game, being the only one, I think, in your suite. Tell me about that.
Obviously, no fans are in attendance throughout all of Major League Baseball. And the same goes for Camden Yards. No, you've been there. I think you've made a trip there, right, BRhat?
You want to know what?
Is it still on the bucket list? You got plenty of time to check this thing off, right? And so
I want to go see Garrett Cole. That was my thing this year.
Yeah, I hear you, yeah. It's always a great ticket to watch the Yankees, right? A lot of the more expensive market teams, their fan bases always make the trip to Camden Yards. I mean, quite frankly, you can probably put together a full weekend here for the same price that you will sitting within an earshot at Yankee Stadium. Nonetheless, the experience was something I'll never forget. It was ear-piercingly quiet at times. And the most bizarre part of it was the fact that because it was the second game of a doubleheader, like you said, the Marlins were actually the home team. They were considered to be the home team inside Camden Yards because of the outbreak that they had within the team COVID. At points, I'm walking into the stadium and I'm hearing Miami tunes. I felt like I should be rocking some kind of, I don't know, tropical button down. It was really, my big takeaway was the fact that this year, any team who goes the distance, any player who is playing out of his or her mind, they love the game because it's so hard to get up, right? You're used to playing in front of thousands and thousands of fans, and all of a sudden you take that element out. How much do you love the game of baseball? How much do you love the game of basketball? Damian Lillard clearly does. We saw that last night. I didn't have a chance to go to the 2015 game after the Baltimore riots where they couldn't host the fans there either. But I know folks who did, and they obviously saw some similarities between the two. So I'm going to try and get out there once a week. Shockingly, they're playing decently. They're 8-7, one game over 500. ESPN had the over/under, I believe, on wins set at 10. So wow. They're gonna skyrocket past that unless something ridiculous happens here. But certainly an experience I'll never forget. And BRhat too. Just because baseball has been up and running for a few weeks now, and you've heard generally it's been successful, except if you continue to have ridiculous brawls, benches clearing incidents, we might be seeing that there might be a trickle-down effect in a league like the NFL where you have a significant more amount of a traveling party. Now you think about it, you have 53 guys on a roster. They'll carry 55 on game day just in case. And then that's not even counting the coaching staff. So I don't think we should sit here and be naive to think that this isn't going to be a problem in the NFL too, even though they're untouchable in a lot of ways from a revenue standpoint and a popularity more than anything standpoint. They're going to be just as vulnerable as Major League Baseball is.
You're taking the words out of my mouth right now. I was about to get into that. What is your take? I mean, I know you cover the Ravens pre and post game on 98 Rock. Do you think there's going to be a season this year? What do you think's going to happen? Obviously they think there's going to be a spike later in the, later months of the year, but do you think we're going to have a full season? What do you think's going to happen?
There's going to be a season. I can pretty much tell you that, undoubtedly, being around the team, hopping on some calls here and there. The NFL has given us every reason to believe there will be. Look at the way that they've trudged through this offseason. They put on the first ever 2020 virtual draft, which I thought was a huge success. And I thought that it had this interesting blend to it that felt right. It felt like it fit with the current era that we're going through. And it pulled at the heartstrings at times. It was funny. It was entertaining. And it was different. It was engaging. That was a lot more engaging than ever before. It can get really monotonous when you're just shaking a guy's hand on the stage in New York. So they've given us every reason to believe that there will be a season. I think there will be. But again, back to what I said a few moments ago, they're not going to be immune to what's already taken place with some of these other leagues. There's going to be positive tests. That's just the reality. In terms of, my specific role with the team, I'm definitely preparing for an underwhelming role, which is kind of tough to say because, we're coming off a 14-2 campaign. Lamar's the reigning MVP. This is a time where there should be a ton of excitement, and there is in terms of what they're going to bring to the table. At the same time, our access is going to be limited for obvious reasons, and that's a tough pill to swallow. All throughout training camp, it's already been ruled that per the NFL and their medical team, there are no in-person interviews. Monday, training camp opens up for us. I'll be out there next week. But again, there's going to be more rules than ever before. And with no in-person interviews, I've honestly been wondering, what's the advantage to being out there? Now, obviously, we're the flagship station of the Ravens. I need to be out there as much as possible. And I hope that access is enhanced by the time the NFL regular season rolls around September 13th for the Ravens purposes. But it's just tough. I'm balancing that out in my mind, in my head, getting ready for not only Lamar's third season, my second with the team. It's tough, but that's a product. That's the current environment that we're in. And I need to swallow my pride a little bit and find a way to do things in different ways virtually. It's something that I've really, on my podcast, Baltimore Sports and Beyond, we've done a lot of Facebook Lives, which caters to, the average millennial or someone who wants to see the person instead of hearing the person. And I thought that's worked well. We can still take the audio and download it to podcast form. So it's been a lot of mixing and matching this off season, and I think that'll continue.
Yeah, and obviously that's what we're trying to do. I actually saw your podcast last week. You had the mayor of Baltimore, was it, that joined you?
The lieutenant governor. Yeah, we talked a little bit about the potential of the World Cup coming here in 2026.
That would be something, let me tell you that, 2026.
A long time away, but hey, it'd be cool.
When we're still on the topic of football, let's talk about the Saturday games. Did you see they might implement some Saturday games now that college football is looking like a no-no this year? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, you think the NFL is a business. It's all about economics and revenue. And if we haven't been reminded of that in the last few months, not only the NFL, the NCAA, you name it, whatever league, it's all a business. And I think a lot of players, a lot of people involved with sports professionally over the last 5-6 months have been hit with a ton of bricks. That's not easy to swallow. No. The fact that sometimes it's a business. I mean, even in our business, you've seen competitors here in Baltimore let go of several people. You saw Comcast, specifically at my former employer last week, let go of 15 to 20 people, both in front of and behind the camera. It's a business, and obviously the pandemic hasn't helped that whatsoever. But again, a Saturday showcase for the NFL certainly could be in the cards here with football on the ropes. We still don't know what's going to take place with those 3 conferences that are left in the Power 5 that still have every plan in place to play right now. But man, that 3:30 slot, which is typically the SEC on Saturdays, you can't tell me the NFL is not licking their chops at that. We haven't even talked about Friday nights either. So we could certainly be seeing a different schedule in what promises to be a different year.
Let's move on quickly. Let's go on to the NBA. I want to talk a little bit of that. Who has been your bubble MVP?
Well, I think it's got to be between two guys, right? Devin Booker and Damian Lillard. I mean, I think there's pretty obvious there. You know, obviously LeBron's been resting himself up throughout this, gearing up for. They already got the one seed locked up, and as he typically does towards the end of the season, he's just trying to get that body right. But to me, and I think it's probably more so timing wise that we're taping this after the last night, it's got to be Damian. I mean, the guy is a freak of nature. Not even physically, mentally. He has been sensational since he started in the NBA. And because of the market that he's in, he doesn't get the same clout, the same coverage, the same hype that a Los Angeles does, that a New York does, for all the wrong reasons in New York, obviously. What Damian is doing for the NBA is so phenomenal. And he's doing it at such an important time too, right? With the fact that a lot of bubble games probably for most people were, at least in these preliminary games to set up the postseason, were probably not must-watch games. He made last night must-watch. He was going up against who could very well be the best player in the league right now. I don't want to disrespect anybody, in Luka. He will be in the next year or so if he's not right now. I know your producer's probably looking at me about that, but we can get to that at another time. But at the same time, it's got to be Dame, man. He is. And then to get back to your original point, though, the NBA is doing a phenomenal job. Maybe not better than the NHL, though. I saw a statistic from Field Yates. Over the last 3 weeks, the NHL, and they have their hub cities up in Canada, they've administered over 18,000 tests for COVID. Not one has come back positive. They're doing a great job. And they've actually had less drama than the NBA has, too. Because when you got your boy Lou going out to the strip club because he's a little dry or whatever that might be inside the bubble, that creates some drama. But nonetheless, those two leagues have really done a solid job from a blueprint standpoint. And maybe we'll see Major League Baseball follow for postseason. I saw a report on that within the last 24 hours or so.
Let's get into some predictions. Your NBA Finals champs, who are you taking this year?
Oh, boy. So it's funny. So Baltimore is really this gives you an idea where my headspace is right now. DC, I guess, could be a little bit.
Yeah.
So I really haven't been paying attention, to be honest with you. I'll follow the scores. I'll follow the headlines and whatnot. But at the same time, I really haven't been as in tune with what's taking place. That said, I still don't think it's a league like March Madness. I don't think the Trailblazers can win this year. I want them to go on a run, but I don't think that's going to happen. And I just wish that, I guess if there was one thing I wished about the NBA, is that there was a little bit more parity. And I guess there was this year, but not as much as there is in college basketball. And that's why it's always going to be held near and dear to my heart. But I'll go with a trendy, sexy pick, I guess, and we'll go with Milwaukee. Who's your producer think?
What do you think, Danny?
If it's not the Lakers, it better be the Trailblazers.
Yeah.
That's all I got to say.
Well, how about let's touch up on let's go back to MLB quick. You got a World Series prediction, little matchup?
Well, first of all, I love to see Houston struggling the way they are, several games under 500. What's interesting about it is that it was supposed to be all about the hatred for Houston and them getting what they deserve in some ways. I'm not talking about, physically, because that opens up a whole new can of worms, and you're talking about beaning guys and plunking guys. But at the same time, if it weren't for this pandemic, it would be about that. They've actually been able to, and nobody should feel grateful for what's happened to our country in the last 5 months. But Houston's probably thinking to themselves like, dang, thank goodness for this, because it's taken at least some of it. It's made somewhat of a distraction. Now, guys haven't forgotten, as we've seen, right? Guys are making sure they understand, and they're letting Houston know how they feel about the sign stealing scandal and just how much of a detriment that was to Major League Baseball. With all that said, the Dodgers have just been cracking and knocking on the door for years and years and years, and they're pissed off this year. They are pissed off. And Clayton Kershaw is one of them. They obviously feel they should have been champs, and I think this could be their year. That said, having worked for the Nationals the first half of their season last year, and then jumping to take this job, which I have no regrets about. But at the same time, the fact that I left a World Series clubhouse was really tough, something I look back at. Again, no regrets, definitely something I look back at. It's just who gets hot. I love the fact that the wild card team, there's going to be another wild card team. I love when they implemented that, because we've seen what momentum can do in October. But this year, a lot of that is I'm not sure if momentum is as important this year. It's always going to be important, but is it as relevant, I should say, in a 60-game season? Whereas it's 162 games, 60, it's incredible. So I'm going to go with the Los Angeles Dodgers just because they've been knocking on the door, and that's where I'll go.
Okay, and I don't want to hurt any Ravens fans, so we'll I think this is Lamar's year. I'll give my Super Bowl prediction. This is Lamar's year, and him and Mahomes are going to be battling in that AFC Championship more than once.
It's been great to see what they have done for their respective teams, for their markets over the last couple of years. The hope is that there'll be a Brady Manning kind of feel for those two for the next 10 plus years if all goes well. You knock on wood there, just because if both guys are very mobile quarterbacks, and we know that there's a risk when you're under center in the NFL, when you're, in 2020, especially with the physicality. I'll just say about Lamar, he has been just a delight to work with, so incredibly generous with his time. He is as authentic as it comes. He's 23, living in a 43-year-old's body. Spirit, I should say. His body's obviously chiseled. But at the same time, he has been to this city so incredibly important as a young black quarterback. We know that Baltimore has its fair share of issues in terms of crime, and there's a gap, a lot of gaps when it comes to racial injustice and whatnot. And I know he's brought a lot of hope and just happiness to this city. It's been incredible. Last year, for my first year to be with them, I couldn't have asked for anything more. Selfishly, it was a lot more exposure for me professionally because of the ride that he took us on. But more importantly, what he did for this city, I'll never forget it. And I know they want to keep him here for life if they can. I know Colin Cowherd's looking at a 16-0 season. I don't think they're going to go undefeated. I think it's too difficult when you're top dog. And quite frankly, we saw last year, having won 10+ games in a row heading into the postseason, it's not great. You become complacent, and then what happened with the Tennessee Titans takes place. And so, again, he has a chance to be really, really special. It's still early. He's only entering his second full season as the starting quarterback, but the sky is literally the limit for this kid, and it's been such a pleasure getting to know him.
Well, let's get into, quickly before you have to go, I want to bang out these 9 rapid-fire questions. So let's get into it. 9 rapid-fire questions for Bobby Trosset. First question, you might have just answered it. Favorite guest you have interviewed?
Al Michaels.
Favorite live sporting event you have attended?
Probably USA gold medal hockey performance in Pyeongchang, South Korea, February of 2018.
Oh, speaking of hockey, I forgot. Shout out BC Puck. What night is it? Beach nights. That was electric.
That year night.
Good stuff. Here we go. Question 3. Craziest fan a thing has said to you, sent you, etc.
So I took over for a guy named Keith Mills, who is in many ways a local legend here. He had been there for 15 years. He was and continues to be Baltimore sports in a lot of different ways. So there was some pressure coming in, and I felt like I needed to fill his shoes as one would. And the hatred, though, that I got, I think they just really missed him. They were in denial, the fan base, that he left. And he's still around. He still does the post-game show with me on 98 Rock and BAL. But at the same time, there was almost like this – people were just so stunned that he left. And who's this new kid, 25 years of age, coming in for this – he was 6 – there's a big age gap. He's 62. I'm now 26. And I just received a lot of pushback, more criticism than I ever have before in my career. But I thought that it made for – it reminded me, hey, you got to have thick skin in this business. You were hired for a reason. Don't read everything that you are sent. And so basically that gives you an idea. That's the PG, maybe even G version of what took place. There's been some hateful things, and everybody has their opinions, and everybody's going to say something online they normally wouldn't in person. So as long as you have thick skin and you know that being in this business, then you'll be all right.
Block them out, and I know probably more at like a professional level you have dealt with a little more, so thank you for giving me the G version. I'm trying to clean up the show a little bit. Moving on, question 4, which do you prefer, being at the stadium for a Ravens game or being at the park for an O's game?
Because of my role, it's the Ravens. we have field access. We have, not that I don't at Camden Yards, but I think the role that I have with the team and the access that we have at M&T Bank would certainly, we're not the flagship station of the Orioles. Yeah. So if we were, I'm sure that would be a tougher answer. But at the same time, Camden Yards has a press box that is much lower to the field than your average baseball stadium. So it makes for a really interactive, engaging viewer experience. But you got to go M&T Bank. The stadium's incredible. They just had a ton of different technology put in there last year, millions of dollars, 3D, technological advances. It's a really fun fan experience.
Number 5, favorite sports film of all time.
Glory Road.
I'm a big Remember the Titans guy, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, well, that's an A1. I kind of wanted to go something that maybe you wouldn't. Yeah, maybe a little less generic. But I mean, that you can't get generic.
No, I get it. No, whatever. I'm generic. I'm a generic person. My show is mainstream, so that's all right. A couple local questions for you. Number 6, favorite Ellesmere memory.
The dancing skit that myself, Pat Rarick, Anthony Umina, Joey Giacone. Oh, I hope I'm not missing anyone. I know I might be there. Might be one or two other guys. We danced to the opening CBS football theme music on the stage in the gym. What did they call it? Was it the
lip sync? It was a lip sync. You guys hit them with the, ooh, I remember.
Mrs. Rarick was key in the choreography. And then I think one that I'll always tell, wasn't one of my better memories because it was a little humiliating, but Rada Knezovic, elementary school. I don't think she'd be offended by me saying this. We were all drool over her. She was the most beautiful thing that walked the earth in my mind. And when she came into Ellesmere, originally from Bosnia, I for one I couldn't believe what I was looking at. I just wanted to talk to her. And anyway, we started kind of getting in whatever you call it back then. Certainly a fling would not be the right word.
Sending some notes back and forth.
Yeah, a couple of notes here and there. Maybe like we're looking at each other in the middle of Mrs. Fredette's class or something like that. But I decided to get down on one knee and give her a plastic ring that I got from Hannaford. Wow. And she looked at it and thought otherwise and threw it into the woods.
Wow. That's a classic. Oh my God. I got Mike Graves. I'll remember this one. Mike Graves. I think it was Marina Scrablack. Ripped a note. She handed him a note and Mike just tore it up. No regrets. Thought it was the man. Everyone patted him on the back. Those relationships back in, 05, 06. The good ones, man.
Shout out for Mikey Graves is the fact that he was always a dominant force and captured a flag.
Your favorite event you announced or emceed that was local?
Oh, probably just the pep rally senior year. Leo and I had that. We had our minds set on that since freshman year when I saw Brendan Kavanaugh do it with Dylan. You got to help me out here, Dylan. I know you weren't even in the high school then. I'm sorry, Dylan, but anyway, Brendan Kavanaugh, I knew him through his sister Erin. I just remember watching, the command that they had on the B gym, and I wanted every bit of that. And so, Leo and I really made that a goal of ours, and we went out and did it.
Had some big shoes to fill the year after.
Dylan Thompson,
that was it. But yeah, no, I had big shoes to fill after you and Leo.
You filled them.
Question 8, one sport you could have gone pro in, what would it be?
None of the above. I mean, I don't know. I was one of those guys who peaked early, like I was playing up on basketball and everything was going well. And then everybody just skyrocketed in terms of height above me. And I never really developed. So like I was on freshman basketball for 2 years with Wilson. And from there, I really leveled off hard. So it certainly wouldn't be basketball. Frankie didn't help me out in the height department there. I guess, if I decided to play golf earlier on, I guess I'll have, just to give you an answer, I'll go with golf. My game's in shambles right now. I wish I had more time. It's so frustrating. I'm getting to the point where I'm just happy to be out there.
All right, last question. Here you go. Number 9. One celebrity you want to take out on a date. Who would it be? You said you've been going on dates, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the market for this, right? Let's see.
We'll tag her after, too, see if she'll tune in.
Oh, I'll probably just have to go old school Jennifer Aniston. I kind of like the older woman, so.
I know my boy Joey will love that answer. He is a Jennifer Aniston fanatic. He's a big fan of the pod. So, Joey, Jennifer Aniston is my man Bobby's answer right here. All right, Bobby. Thank you, man, for joining us. Seriously. Thank you for giving us your time. You want to plug anything, shout it out.
Oh, hey, I appreciate you having me on, both you guys. I know that you've gotten this thing up and running recently, and I've been watching from afar, obviously rooting for you always. But the 518 is always going to be close to home for me. Not necessarily close to where I am now, but I was lucky enough to get home a little bit this summer in the midst of the pandemic. So, I've been doing a podcast myself. It's called Baltimore Sports and Beyond. You can find it on all my social media platforms at Bobby WBAL, and look forward to doing this again down the road, man.
Oh, absolutely, Bobby. Thank you for joining us, and we would love to have you on maybe later in the Ravens season and see where we're at then.
All right, boys. Best of luck. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, my man. Thank you.
Thanks, Petro.
Later. Peace. Appreciate it.